Hello and welcome to the Quantum Human Revelations. Sorry, I'm a bit late this evening. The computer decided it had more important things to do than let me go live. Oh, just adjust that a little bit. That's a bit better. So last week we were talking about the Syrian energies. So we're coming to the end of July now and getting ready for August energy soon. So I thought this week would be a good chance to do a recap and talk about the big energy shift that happened sort of end of last week, Thursday time. So grab yourself a cup of tea and come and join me, and be free to ask questions. I'm going to make sure that the YouTube actually shows me the chat this time, because it didn't show me the chat for the last 2 weeks, and I've just discovered you guys were all chatting to me and I couldn't see anybody's comments. So that was a bit of a surprise. Oh, hello, Emma, thank you. At least I can see somebody's there. That means my YouTube's working, so that's fantastic. I was hoping somebody would do that. I think what's happened is it changed the settings, and it had like the top chat and then it had live chat. So somebody said, make sure I click that this time, which I have. So hopefully I'll see everybody chatting today as well, which is cool. So hello to everyone on Zoom that are live with me, and we'll be staying for the think tank after this talk. And hello to everyone that's joining me on YouTube. So now that I know I can see people, that's great. So this kind of quantum human revelations is kind of like a story unfolding. It's a bit of I suppose like a series. You know, they are episodes, but they're not themed in advance. It's if you start at the beginning and followed through, you kind of see how the story's unfolding. And the reason I started doing them was to share a little bit of my own story and why I sort of shifted from, or not so much why, but how I've done the shift from a computer programmer into more spiritual work. And how now I'm not just moving data using programming, but I'm now reprogramming mindsets and helping people to take their soul on this ascension journey and to connect more with their soul. And the reason I kind of say that is because whilst the spiritual realm is very abstract and esoteric, it is possible to have it done in a way that's structured that can satisfy the logical mind, because I'm the proof of that. Because my mind always wants to ask questions. It always wants to know why. It wants to know the details. So I tend to use my spiritual journey as a way for me to expand my consciousness, for me to learn more. But in doing that, I also change my frequency. And it's that kind of symbiotic kind of relationship between the more I connect to my spirituality, the more I grow. And this really is the only reason for us existing, in a way, is for us to keep learning more about who we are, who our true authentic self is, and learning to express ourselves, not from the personality, but from the soul. So there's kind of the ascension energies are there to nudge us to get bigger, to be bolder. But equally, you know, we're always as a human fighting our personality desires versus our soul desires. And society is really set up to satisfy the personality, not the soul. So I can understand why most people follow the kind of mainstream narrative of what you should do to help yourself progress. But I suppose back in 2020, I decided I was going to take a new journey and make sure that I connected only with my soul, just out of curiosity to start with, to see what my soul was going to show me. And it's been such an amazing journey that I've been now teaching others to do that as well, so that they can connect to their soul. And it's kind of like exciting when I'm with somebody waiting to see what their soul's going to tell them. And there's usually the same reaction where they sit there and go, I kind of knew that, but I was ignoring it. And so it's not like it's something, well, it is a little bit of a revelation to a certain degree, but there's still that feeling like, yeah, I kind of knew that. And either they didn't quite know how to then progress with it, or they didn't know what it meant. So being able to help people pass through that kind of gateway is really wonderful work. And I really enjoy it way more than I enjoyed computer programming. Not that I have any issues with programming, but the world of programming was on a false timeline, was on a kind of false reality of what we were supposed to be as humans. It wasn't very soul satisfying, and this work is much more. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't do computer programming. You know, what my plans are is that the people that I help will go back in to become a new quantum human programmer with this different view on it. And it's funny because most of the people I talk to have computing. You know, you say, oh yeah, I'm into this, and then you say, what do you do for a job? Oh, I'm a computer programmer. So the two do kind of go hand in hand, which is really interesting. And I think it's great that you got that analysis, deep understanding ability from the computer programming. And then if you can mix that with your spirituality, how it can take you to another level. So that just gives you a bit of a background of my story and how I got here. So I'm just constantly checking with YouTube at the moment to make sure I'm not missing any comments. So please put some comments on so I know that I'm still in touch with you guys on that. That would be great. So over the last few weeks, the story's kind of been unfolding about our creative energy. And it started from me asking the question, how do we as humans become abundant? Because we're going through a cost of living crisis, and it was kind of triggered off the back of that to say, well, how can we become more abundant? And then I had to sit down and say, well, what is abundance? Is it just money? And it's not necessarily just money. There are other things like spiritual abundance, love abundance. You know, there's so many different aspects. But when I looked at the money abundance in particular, it was basically coming back to your creative energy. We sell our creative energy in exchange for money. That's the kind of exchange that we've got on Earth. And as soon as you put the creative energy behind money, it kind of makes it much more interesting, because now it's not about going to work to make money. It's about the expression of your soul through your creative energy. And I think most of our jobs really are a form of us being this expression, but also a discovery at the same time. So not only are we expressing ourselves, we're also using our external world to kind of be a mirror back to us so that we can learn more about ourselves. Now, if all of our jobs were based off of that premise, can you imagine how much more satisfying life will be? The number of hours that we put into work, the number of hours that we spend in the office versus at home or commuting. It's a large chunk of our time. And if we're not getting that soul satisfaction there, then it's going to make sure that our lives are out of balance, and it's going to impact other areas of our lives too. So I call this the kind of the soul vision of life, because if we can get this bit right, it kind of rolls off into other areas. So it used to be called soul purpose, but soul purpose felt like it had a dedicated aspect to it, or a preordained aspect to it. Now it feels that your soul vision is really for you to create, because 2023 energy came through with, you've got all these different frequencies, you can create with them. But the problem with that is once you take away the rule book of how we create, then it's up to us now to work at how we create. And we've been so used to being in a system where we're told A, then B, then C, then D. For us now to say, well, actually, here they are, mix them up and do them any order you want. We haven't always got the ability to do that. And that shows up because when I ask people what is their great vision, what do they want to achieve on this planet, there's always quite a big gap between the answer and me asking the question. So I'll ask you now, what is your great vision? Now, I know some people on Zoom with me have been working on this, so they now know what theirs is. So don't be put off if somebody seems to have a better vision than you, but just think about what is your great vision? Because everything you're doing in the now, in the present, is creating your future. And it's really important that we are focused enough now to know that we want X in the future so we can start creating it now. So just think into what your great vision is. Now we're coming up to the Aquarius full moon next week, and the Aquarius full moon is where we start taking our vision and aspirations from the personality, even from the soul, and we start looking at it on a mass consciousness level, like for humanity. And we start thinking about what do we want to create for humanity. So this time of year, it's no surprise that we're kind of getting pinched and nudged and pushed quite a lot to step up into something different. Now, if we're not used to it, that can feel like we're being beaten up for no reason. We might be losing things that we wanted to keep, not realizing they're going for something new to come in. We could be sensing dissatisfaction, frustration, burnout, all the kind of signs that we're not doing quite what we're meant to be doing, that we're kind of using willpower and force through our lives instead of flowing gracefully and navigating life from a soul-led perspective. So those kind of things start showing up more this time of year when we sense that we're not quite where we want to be in our lives. So the Sirian energies that we've been speaking about are kind of related to this. And I thought I'd try another analogy today. So has anybody got any soul visions before I move on? So at the end of the last week, it was the end of last week, there was a huge change in frequencies on the planet. And I've been talking about the Sirian tug of war between mass consciousness and the Sirian energies that were coming in. And that tug of war was very much related to mass consciousness, fear-based, pulling us down, and the Sirian energies trying to pull us up. So that's that kind of frequencies that we were being like pulled from one end to the other and trying to connect to which end we were at. But somebody commented on the video last week when I went back and looked at the commenters, onto the comments, and it said that they thought they could sense hope within the mass consciousness. So I asked, was it the hope of mass consciousness they could feel, or the hope of Sirius? And that kind of made me sort of start thinking, well, if I was to break down the lessons of what Sirius has been trying to teach us this last month, maybe that will kind of resonate a bit more with people and they can connect to that. So think of it in terms of the Sirius kind of cycle gateway is when Sirius rises on the east just before sunrise. So it's called, I don't know how to pronounce this right, an heliacal cycle. It's the beginning of a heliacal cycle. And Sirius particularly is a 365-day cycle before it comes and does this again. And in ancient times, it was seen as a way to mark the calendar, because we know that the calendar we use today is man-made. So it's not necessarily related as much to the cosmic kind of activities as the old ancient calendars used to be. And the Egyptians really were into that kind of cycle, and it marked this rising marked the start of the flood of the Nile, which is when they would then have more fertile lands to do more things with, so they could grow. So it was quite a new beginnings type marker, and that's why they orientated their calendar around it. But this time every year, I noticed as well that there's quite a lot, like you've got the summer solstice, then you have the Sirius Rising, and Sirius is known as our spiritual sun. And then we have the Lion's Gateway, which is when the sun is in Leo constellation, which is about leadership, thought leadership, moving forward. So this time of year, there's quite a lot of pushing and pulling to really get humanity to step up into another level. Now, not all of us will be sensitive to that necessarily, but you can see how that kind of energy could be touching the edges of a lot more people these days. And that's why I talk about quantum humans, because one of the lessons we learn as quantum humans is to start responding to these energies that are around us, these frequencies that are around us, so that we can start integrating them into our lives. So if we assume that Sirius is our spiritual sun, then it's passing us loads of new downloads and codes and new ways of being. We're then, as humans, either going to receive that or not. And then we come into the Leo, the sun in Leo, where we're then said, right, how are you going to take this forward and do something with it? Being a leader doesn't mean you have to be a leader of others. Being a leader is being the leader of your life first, like put your mask on first, put the mask on others later. You put your mask on first, and then you make sure that other people get to see you doing what you're doing. And if you're doing that, you are leading. Okay, so leading doesn't have to be a complicated thing. But just think about that for a moment, and how you are leading your life, or are you acting as a victim of your life? That's the kind of the opposite. If you're not leading, you might be letting life happen to you and force you into certain directions. Hello to Michaela on YouTube, cool. So Jenny saying that her great vision was helping people heal from their parents' divorce when they were a child, using the energies of flowers in 5D. So that's rather beautiful. So anybody else got any of their soul visions yet that they've tuned into? So when we think about Sirius, I was trying to think of an analogy today to help explain this sort of energy. Now, Sirius rising is just one of the stars rising in the east and starting his cycle. There's lots of others, but as a quantum human, you start, like, I guess the very first energy sensing we do is the moon. When we start noticing the full moon, that's the first time we start noticing we're awakening to something outside of ourselves. You know, we can't see electricity, we can't see Wi-Fi, and yet they exist, and we know they exist. So these kind of planetary movements around us are all causing gamma rays or radiation waves, are all coming to the planet and impacting us on some level. So it's causing a shift in us as humans, in our cells. So it does create change. So Sirius, as the spiritual sun rising this time of year, obviously is going to start making us feel a little bit more in alignment with our spiritual aims and goals. So the way I thought I'd describe it is, imagine that, and this kind of happens in July roughly, but Some people say it starts on the 7th of the 7th, using the numerology kind of dates. But it can happen, I think actually the rising date is the 21st of August this year. But the gateway, like with the moon, can kind of start influencing us before the actual date of it happening. So bear with me. So I was thinking it's a bit like you're going to summer school in July. You're kind of all excited. You're going for your personal development upgrade on your spiritual abilities. So you arrive in the school in July, you start getting some lessons to learn, so that by the time the 8th of the 8th comes around, which is the line gateway, you then get your exam to decide if you understand it enough so you can become the leader of it and take it forward into your life. Does that make sense? So imagine that the Sirius Rising is like the opening of spiritual school. The 8/8 is your exam date of how are you managing the lessons of this syllabus this year, because next year there'll be a different syllabus. And how are you then going to take that and implement it in your life afterwards? And I think that's probably the simplest way I can explain the Sirian energies and how they impact us. Oh, excellent, Jenny's got that. Yes, I was hoping more people would get that, but I'm hoping that makes sense. So if we take it one step further, then let's ask what the syllabus this year was. And that's been what I've been talking about over the last few weeks. So the syllabus this year was about learning that time is not linear and that we have more control over time than we realize. And I talked about the snakes and ladders, you know, where you can land on a ladder and go shooting up, or land on a snake and go shooting down. That was kind of part of the lesson. So how many people that are watching now that have seen that post or that talk did something by becoming a leader of it, in that they researched time a bit, or they looked at how time was influencing their lives, or they considered the man-made calendar versus the cosmic clock that I spoke about in that session? And that's the leader bit, that's when you step into it to take it forward, is when you ask yourself those questions. The second lesson that we've been encouraged to look at is to separate out the ability to sense mass consciousness, which is slightly more negative because we're more fear-based generally as humans, versus Sirius energies, which is much hopeful, more spiritual, more enlightened, more encouraging us into the bigger version of ourselves. And starting to notice what thoughts come from which. Now, that's just two of the energies. You might take it further, and like I said, prepare for the Aquarius full moon next week and start tuning into what that's telling you. But it's asking us, because we, again, a couple of months ago, I think it was, we talked about the new energy sensing skills that were opening up this year. Well, that's an energy sensing skill. And as quantum human, it's our ability to say, okay, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to walk in nature and see if I can sense the plants. I'm going to go into a room and see if I can sense the energy of a room. I'm going to just tune into the world and see if I can sense man's consciousness on a human level. I'm going to tune into the world on an earth level, and I'm going to tune into the world on a galactic level and see what I can see, and just play with it as a game and see what you notice. So again, it comes back to that asking questions like, why is Sirius so important? Did anybody actually go and Google it and find out? Did you sit down and meditate with it and sort of tune in yourself to see how Sirius impacts you? And it's possible it doesn't. Maybe another planet is, or another star system is what triggers your spiritual awakening or your process. But that's a natural rhythm that we've all got our own unique natural rhythm to tune into. So this kind of, like, you can see this deep questioning is part of us as quantum humans learning more about ourselves and starting to expand our consciousness outside of the personality and looking at things from a bigger perspective. So that's time, and that's sensing energies, the difference between mass consciousness and the Sirian spiritual sun energies. We also got the lesson of karma. So karma was coming up quite a bit. And I said that there was this wave of karma that was kind of washing over the earth and impacting the negativity of mass consciousness even more. But the lesson of karma wasn't so much that it was the karmic lesson you were being given. Again, it was asking us to contemplate, what did karma mean to us? So we know that the vibration you hold defines your life. So if you think karma is bad and it's like unlucky and all the negative aspects, then you may find that you are creating that in your external world. But if you believe the karma is just a soul lesson to be learned without the emotional kind of fear or worry about what it is, then you might actually find that they're just soul lessons. There is no negative impact. You learn your lesson, you move through it, you pass on to the next lesson. So here, the lesson was really with karma, was learning to understand that your thoughts, your frequencies, your words, everything that you consider as your worldview, even of how you look at the world, will define your experience. So if you want to believe that Earth is a prison planet, which was something that I believed for a long time because that's what I was told, then we're going to see all the examples in life that show us that that is true. It's almost like we can have these multiple realities all around us, and we get to choose which bubble we're looking into. If we want to believe that karma isn't that big a deal and that we can manage it, then we sort of shift our perspective and our perceptions over to a slightly different worldview. And the more of us that start doing it, the more we cancel out mass consciousness and the negative fear energy. So it's kind of like, instead of looking at the problem, we're starting to looking at the solution of what we want, which again is very much leading up to the Aquarius next month. What is this bigger image of humanity can we have? And how can we step forward with that, you know, and create something completely new? We do it by going one vibration at a time. I'm just going to read YouTube. So it's kind of flipping in and out with the comments on YouTube. So Michaela's great vision is healing through movement. And Emma saying that she's here to create space to heal using sound, mama, cacao, and is that gong crystals or qigong? Crystal making, own products, teaching self-love, chanting prayer, healing, as I've risen from the darkness. And it's the first time with me. Thanks, Emma, for joining me for the first time. So with all of that, a lot of that are your tools. Can you think about how can you apply those tools for transformation instead? So see if you can create a transformation of what you want to change in humanity or in your clients using those as your tools. So like from something to something, that's what I encourage people to do when we're talking about soul visions. Taking people out of, for me, like confusion, stuck and lost, into having a clear path for where they want to go. And the tools I use are future life progression and energy sensing and 5D frequencies. Yeah, so they're my tools. But what I'm doing is that slightly bigger topic. So hopefully have a think about that and then give us an update in a moment. Yes, so resonating with the Leo, I'm Leo. Okay, cool. That's great, Emma. I'll read the second comment in a minute. So we've got understanding time on a new level, like really breaking it down and understanding it. Looking at the Sirius mass consciousness division, so starting to recognize energies in a much more subtle way so we can understand where it's coming from and why it's coming to us. The third one was the karma. So for us, because I'm a soul guide, a soul vision guide, my understanding of the karma that happened for the last couple of weeks will be related to my work, because that's my unique frequency and why I'm here. Somebody else might look at karma and see it on a different level. So perhaps for somebody who's feng shui, which I was going to ask Marta to look into this, she might have seen a karmic issue to do with houses. This is different to what I would see, because we're not meant to be masters of everything. We're meant to be an expert in our own frequency and tune in. So the karmic issue that I noticed was that we'd been doing a tit for tat exchange of our creative energy so that we can see, like maybe I stole your ideas last time, so you steal my ideas this time, which meant this would perpetuate this all the time. But what I realized is, whilst I might take myself out of that karmic cycle, the other person who believes that can keep it going. So I was looking at, well, how do we break it so the other person doesn't keep reinstating that contract, even if I've broken it? That was my kind of inquiry. So when I said this to you last week about the tit for tat, about you stole from my energy and now I'm stealing from you, did you question that? Did you sit down and think about what in your life might have caused some of these issues for you, or showed up for you? Or was there a particular pattern in your life that you could relate was perhaps a karmic pattern that was now coming up to be finally released and to end and to permanently end it? Again, that's what a quantum human would do, because once they've done that, it then makes you aware of karmic cycles or soul lessons, which means then you're able to spot them more easily and learn them more easily and move forward more easily. I'm just going to check in here. So Marta says she's been pondering about the stars recently. You say that, but I'm not quite sure which part of the conversation that was in. And notice karmic ties in relation to clients' houses that has affected them. Yeah. So whenever we get these energies coming in, it's not that it's bad luck or it's happening to you. Like I said, it's about you being, they're almost your clues. So if spiritual school opened at the beginning of July, everything during July is a clue, whether it be some bad luck, whether it be a change in something, somebody leaving. These are all clues for something that needs to shift for you to learn your lessons so that you can graduate and pass your exam on the 8th of the 8th. So watching your existence, like if karma was one of the syllabus topics, then you can see how that's important right now. It doesn't mean that there aren't other things. It means these are the main topics for this year's syllabus: time, karma, sensing energies. I'm just going to check my list to see what the other lessons were from the other weeks. Oh, yeah. So on top of that then as well, is the separation between personality and soul-based thinking. And when we think of that, we're starting to move away from that unconscious behavior of personality and into a more soul-led approach. So that was another lesson of this year of the Sirian energies. So starting to realize that we are more in control of our lives than we realize, and being able to step up and see, like it's almost like that analogy of when you rise up like an eagle and fly above your life and look at it from a higher perspective, you see everything differently. And that's kind of like the simplest way to explain the difference of the personality being stuck in the mud and the eagle rising up and looking down and saying, well, actually, you might be stuck in the mud, but if you take 2 steps left, you'll find you're on solid ground again. So that's the kind of difference between personality and soul kind of understanding. And it's not just, you know, it takes a while to go through all the lessons of the personality and soul. It's not something that happens all in one moment, but we're not meant to have everything fixed in one go. Our journey is to go through these 1 year at a time, integrating them, embodying them, making them part of our disciplined practices, and then applying them to our life to influence other people who then will see what we're doing and want to join and do the same thing for themselves, raising the vibration of humanity as we go. So we've got, so Emma was saying, love these topics, resonate with your energy. Thank you. I'm Leo as well. So astrology, love our birth charts and with zodiac. We create time, our words through its power and our vibration. Yeah. So we create through, I think that means I create through our words and thoughts and the power of our vibration. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And then Judy says she's been finding solutions easier with understanding and using the Sirius vibrations. I think I find the same. I find it gives me hard lessons, but if I allow the lesson and don't fight and resist it, then I'll also find the solution. But I also know that, you know, when you go to school, you don't expect to master a lesson at the beginning of class when you start as the student. You expect to have it mastered by the time you finish the syllabus. And that's a little bit like when I do these live every week, is that I'm starting the syllabus, I don't quite know where it's going until the end of the month, and then I have a bit more understanding, then we start again. So it's not about getting your answers immediately sometimes. Some of us can, and some of us just need a bit longer to process it. Oh, hey, Charles. Yes, I can see comments today. Are you saying karma is contracts? They kind of are contracts, but not, they don't have to be as complicated as some karmic beliefs kind of say. They don't have to be like a permanent thing. We can break contracts, but often because this is a planet of free will, and I think that's kind of part of the karmic lesson, is that if this is a planet of free will and we have karmic debt, then we have to question, how did that karmic debt be created in the first place? And it's often us that created it because we wanted either to hide from our power, or we didn't feel worthy enough, or we were tricked or manipulated. There's lots of different reasons why we end up with these contracts. But if we accept that we probably were complicit in the creation of them, that means we can also break them. And I think that's always the thing with free will, is knowing that everything that's happened to us, we've had some either conscious or unconscious involvement in it. So that if we want to break it, we can. So I think that's part of what this syllabus this year. So even if we pass the exam in August, these lessons are probably going to go right through to the next Sirius gateway. So it's kind of like setting the initial learning up now for you to go and practice it all year. So this is something you can watch how it develops over the next year. So I think that was the main ones as I'm coming up to time. I started a bit late. I was 10 minutes late starting. Oh, I see. Yeah, Marta was talking about stars and thinking about the structure of time and how fluid. Yeah, time has most definitely been very, very fluid recently. So it's been a bit of a challenge. So hopefully that kind of gives you an understanding. So let me just recap what I was saying. So I'm sort of saying that we are at a point now of really stepping into our soul vision and understanding who we are and what we're here to do. It's important that we align with that if we're going to be successful. The people that can do this are going to have more success and more happiness because they can do this. The quantum human traits are this awareness of our 3D and our 5D abilities and bringing them together. But it's also that deep thinking and asking questions. And the Sirius gateway is like going to school, a spiritual school that just opens in July. And by August 8, the lion, the Leo energy, the sun in Leo, starts coming in and asking you, are you ready to lead the rest of your life with these lessons you've just learned? And the lessons that we've had in this particular cycle of Sirius was about karma and your definition of it and your way of processing it and your personality versus soul separation, understanding that, sensing the energy of mass consciousness versus higher consciousness frequencies, and the, what was the fourth one? Time. Did I say time? Oh, and the impact, yeah, of mass consciousness and Sirian energies. So I got a little distracted there. Ah, shit, too late. Sorry, I'm just, my cat has just brought a mouse into the house. So I'm going to end the session there, as I think I have got to go and catch a mouse now. I thought I was going to just catch him in time. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. And next Tuesday, I'll be doing a full moon soul journey, which is the Aquarius one, where again, we'll be looking at the personality and soul lessons of Aquarius and what that's going to do for us. And I'm excited because Aquarius, we start looking at asking people to take a future life journey with us, so we can start seeing what people see as our future of humanity. So that's next Tuesday at 8:30. I'll be live next Monday at 8 p.m, hopefully on time. And I hope you guys all have a great week until I see you next week. All right. I'm going to catch a mouse now. Thank you guys. Bye for this week.